So the line breaker then is that little mini hammer that maybe just has one job to do. You send it in to hit a thing hard, get it out of the way, and then, you know, you don't necessarily care about it sticking around for the rest of the game. Maybe one of those cheap $2 hammers you buy from Home Depot
Right.
to hit a nail, and then you don't care if it's going to be there to hit the next
just to
nail.
fix that one thing that's in your
exactly.
way.
Drive in that little proud nail.
So some examples I have of possible hammers, and these are totally up for discussion as well, as I'd say Beastigores are a good one.
Hammer?
Yeah. I mean, they're not an anvil, that's for sure. Something good and choppy. A big block of choppy stuff.
Yeah, but a little tenor of Bestigors might be a good example of a line breaker.
Yeah, I wouldn't run a tenor of Bestigores anyway.
All right.
Or we're talking a 30-man break of Bestigores.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of chop. Retributors, even in a 10-man or more. They can put out some serious mortal woundage. A Maw Crusher.
Maw Crusher's pretty good.
Pretty good. And Grimghast Reapers.
Grimghast, yeah, when it comes to a hammer, I think of anything that, you know, it's all about like maximizing attacks within a footprint, right? Or maximizing damage output within a footprint. So I'm surprised you didn't go straight to Witch Elves, obviously, because you've got 25 mil bases, so you get a lot of them in combat, and they're putting out 4 attacks each.
When I wrote this up, I tried to avoid Daughters of Cain as much as possible.
Well, then let's go to the Gits then. What's the gittiest hammer you can think of?
That's what kind of weirds me out about Gits, is I don't know if they really...
I don't know if they have a classic hammer.
They don't have a classic hammer. They have line breakers galore.
For days. They also have, you know, 60 Gits with buffs on them, with that whatever the buff is that lets them put out mortals on a 6 or something.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't call like the Mangler or the Colossal a hammer?
A Colossal Squid is a hammer.
Yeah, and a Loom Boss on Mangler is a hammer too.
Yeah.
It's maybe just not a hammer. It's not one of these hammers that we're talking about that can be thrown in and wipe anything off the table.
But a Mangler Squig is a line breaker.
Yeah.
240 points, you toss it into a unit, and it might destroy that unit. You know, if it goes first and you roll well, it can eat a lot out of that unit. And when it dies, it might even take more of that unit.
So yeah, like classically I would call that a hammer, but the stuff in the game now that, for all intents and purposes, I think just basically does infinite damage. Like there's some units that it doesn't matter how much damage they do, because it's just enough to kill whatever's there.
Yeah, I mean, when you're...
So like your 20 buffed up sisters, blood sisters.
Yeah.
Or like the flesh eater, Terrorgeist.
Right. Like or the Skaven 40
the plague monks.
Plague monks. A group of 40 of them is just
It's
gross.
a unit that whatever you touch with it, your opponent should just take them all off the table to save a lot of dice for
Yeah, I mean, I can, you know, with Witch Elves, you can roll 120 dice, or it will, you know, I can roll 120 dice 4 times, or you can just remove your...
I can roll all my saves and then my after saves, but whatever we do, I'm just going to take all his models.
This is so much incoming damage.
So the Gits doesn't necessarily have one of those, I would say.
But they have a lot of options for line breakers.
They do.
So what you would want to do is almost stack some of your line breakers.
Yeah, right.
You know, you hit somebody with 2 or 3 Mangler Squigs, and it's not necessarily a hammer, but it's enough line breaker that it's going to, you know, you're not going to do infinite damage, but you're going to do enough damage.
Yeah, although Boingrot Bounders too are going to be like that.
Yeah, Boingrot Bounders are very much a line breaker unit.
Yeah.
I would also say, you know, models like the War Hydra, Morghost Archai, the Morghost can act as line breakers, but those are more of chaff removal line breakers. I would classify
them more as garbage.
Oh, no.
Along with the Morghost Archai. But anyway,
Korngaroth is a classic line breaker for all your corn friends.
Right.
Good at removing chaff. If you get a combat between 2 anvils, or an anvil and a hammer, or 2 hammers, and you throw a couple of Korngaroths in, they're going to help force multiply your side.
Yeah.
So the opposite of a hammer is a unit that's better at living than it is killing.
Yeah.
Which is a hammer, or which is an anvil. Yeah. So what I want out of an anvil is, other than chaff, whereas I would put chaff as almost the line breaker version of an anvil. It's a mini anvil But
it's an anvil that's designed to last one turn.
One turn. An anvil. What
And not
defines
even
an anvil?
really. It's just like, yeah, it's a waste. It's
Yeah.
a waste of your opponent's turn.
What defines an anvil is it's going to live for multiple turns.
Right.
You know, it's something that's going to sit there and save off, or just be so difficult to cause that many wounds to.
Mm-hmm. There's one, yeah. Well, like you see an objective, you're like, if I get this unit up to that objective, then I can hold it most of the game.
So some classic ones are plague bearers for chaos.
Oh yeah.
You know, the
yeah.
multiple saves on them. Another option is like the Tree Lord Ancient that Sylvaneth get, where it just sits and has a 2-up reroll 1 save.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that seems good. And then you have kind of smaller anvils too, like Gorgruntas, and even
mobile anvils.
You know, something that you can use to pin a unit for a couple of turns.
Right.
Gorgruntas do that really well. You can charge them in. You know, if you drop them into the side of a formation where not so much can pile in and fight them, they'll live there for a couple of turns and just kind of keep it a model there. So why would you pick an anvil over a hammer?
Personally? Oh.
I mean, sort of both.
Mm-hmm.
Either, what is the advice of taking anvils? I mean, I go with all hammer armies. But I think very linearly.
Well, this is not an answer to your question, because I'm going to basically... Well, so I personally don't really take anvils either, but that's because I think the game is not really well balanced at the moment between hammers and anvils. I think there's hammers in the game at the moment that will kill anything you might define as an anvil. Whereas in like old Warhammer, it wasn't so, right? There were units that you would leave there and would sit there all game.
That could just get chewed up slowly, yeah.
Right.
But there are models. I mean,
there are things that there's the whatever the new Fire Slayers are. The Grim something Berserkers.
Yeah.
They seem like they would actually last the whole game. So maybe my point is wrong. But yeah, the reason you take one is that, like I said, you need something that's going to sit and hold an objective all game. And as long as you can get it onto the objective before your opponent's hammer gets there, that hammer can hammer away at you most of the game, but you're still going to hold the objective.
So in building a list, if there is a unit that you want to serve as an anvil, I think to make it a proper anvil, you need to put a lot into it, be it through buffs or...
Right, look for whatever
full strength unit and things like that. I think an anvil is something you're using to super commit to an objective.
Right. I mean, the other great use of them is in like classic hammer and anvil strategy. Is the idea is you get your opponent to charge your anvil, and then when they're stuck on your anvil, you smack them with your own hammer.
Yeah, or you use
side or whatever, right?
And that's not a terrible use of trolls in the...
Oh no, trolls are a great anvil.
Gloomspite.
Gloomspite has a bunch of anvils. You've got the 60 goblins as well, which point for point is like that takes a lot of time to chew through.
Yeah, you have to cause 60 wounds. Yeah, make them battle shock immune, and then they'll go. But the nice thing about that is if your opponent does that, you can then countercharge them with a couple of Mangler Squigs, and Mangler Squigs are going to make short work out of whatever's bumped into your anvil.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, like ideally your anvil kind of spreads out across the front of your opponent's hammer, so they basically have to hit that, and then you can get your own little hammers on the side where only maybe like one or two of your opponent's models can actually hit them.
Right, so they're not striking back on your hammers or your line breakers.
So you're forcing
in this
them
case.
to put the attacks into your 60 grots,
right,
and then smacking them with 2 manglers.
But you can also use chaff to do that,
yes,
which is the next unit role we're going to cover.
The way to do it.
It's another way to do it.
Yeah.
So as opposed to having a huge brick of stuff, you use lots of little units. And if you think about it, if I spend near 500 points on a unit, to have it kill anything it bumps into, and you spend 300 points feeding it for 4 turns, stuff, you make out 200 points on the battlefield better than I did. because you've just fed it 300 points of garbage, and I've spent 500 points that did nothing but removed your garbage.
Right.
So
This is why I think in the game at the moment, chaff is better than anvils, because if I have an opponent's unit that does infinite damage, do I want that to go into my giant anvil unit, or do I want it to just munch 5 dogs and then munch 5 more dogs and then etc.
well, that's why I like units like the Blood Sisters so much, is because they end up being a super effective anvil while they're a super effective hammer.
So yeah, then you get into units that you would call like a grinder maybe. It's like a hammer and an anvil together. It can just like grind through through whatever.
You know, their saves are strong enough, they're multi-wound, and they put out a ton of damage.
Yeah. So there's Daughters of Cain for you. Every unit is both a hammer and an anvil and fast.
Witches are fast hammers. But chaff, I mean, you can chaff them pretty easily, and I'm out easily 600 to 800 points, depending on what units I have working with it to buff them.
Yeah.
So the dogs are complaining about not getting pets.
They're getting some.
I know. You've been hard at work this entire podcast petting the poor dogs.
Mm-hmm. So in the Gits, you've got chaff for days again.
Oh, you have chaff for days.
You can string out like, lines of 20 grots.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to waste a turn killing 20 grots.
No, it's just, and you're probably not going to kill at 20 grots if you don't, get a nice big facing on them.
Right.
So, and the other fun thing with chaff units is you can direct how your opponent moves.
Exactly.
You are then controlling the board more by having your opponent move around.
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways to position your chaff. You can kind of do the layering approach, like layer it in front of your important stuff so your opponent has to hit your chaff first. Or you can take the chaff to them and just be like, I want to make sure you move as little as possible in your turn. So you're going to spend a turn walking up and hitting my chaff, and you've moved like all of 6 inches that turn. Well done.
Yeah. So another unit roll that I can think of, and I'm sure there's other unit rolls that I can't think of when we finish this, but these are just the ones I had prepped, are units that you would use specifically for grabbing a objective.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, you want super high mobility.
Speed.
These are the guys you want to just leap over your lines, leap over their lines, grab that all-important objective for a turn, and who cares if they live or die.
Right.
Gloomspite have a bunch of those as well.
Yep.
Well, I guess the Squig Riders are that, and the Spider Riders.
Yeah, and in the Gits, you can turn anything into that with Hand of Gork. You just have a
throw them across the board.
You can pick up anything and toss it across the board to take an objective. So that's, mobility tricks like that is sometimes the thing that like changes your entire approach to the game. Because then like any unit can act in this role or that role, I just get to toss it.
Yeah, I mean, you can, throwing a, simple unit across the battlefield is, highly effective. And I think those are the main roles for non-specialized units.
Mm-hmm.
So the next roles we're going to get into are going to be a bit more specialized.
Right.
I will say there are some units that you can run that don't really have much of a role.
Yes.
I mean, they're just not specialized enough to be good at one thing, and it's better to be good at one thing. It's best to be good at several things.
Sure.
But
best to be way undercosted and really good at
it. It's better to be, a 500 wound model that only costs 100 points that puts out 600 mortal wounds at 40, inch range. However, with that not existing, if you have the option of taking a unit that does one thing well, or a unit that does 2 things average,
right,
you're better off taking the one that does one thing well and using it for that one thing.
Yeah, and so like every tome will have a bunch of these guys in there who this could be the 200 points you like throw away or whatever if you really like the model.
Yeah, I mean,
and you'll kill something with it, maybe you'll take an objective with it, maybe, but was there something that could have done that better?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a good one for Gloomspites that we can go over is Boingrot Bounders versus Squig Hoppers.
Yeah, right.
Boing Bounders are a pretty sweet little.
Yeah.
Boing Bounders are just like undercosted, which is great. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's great.
Undercosted is yours. I hate this unit.
Right.
So whenever you say it's undercosted, it's something that's pissed you off. In the
Yeah,
past.
exactly. Nothing in my army is undercosted.
No, everything's
No,
perfect.
no,
It
no.
costs too
just
much.
correctly. And if it does something really good, it's because of my skill, not because it was
Mhm.
undercosted. But Boing was bait. And you're right, they're costing the price point that makes the regular squid hoppers kind of useless.
Right.
'Cause why do I want that?
Yeah, I mean, if Squig Hoppers cost half as much as Boing Bounders, you'd see them.
Yeah. How much
But-
do they cost? 80 compared to 100?
I think they're almost, I think it's
Yeah.
like 80 to 100, if anything.
Yeah,
Yeah. And Boing Bounders are good at killing stuff.
right.
Move the same amount. And Squig Hoppers are okay at killing stuff.
Right.
So you can save that 20 points for that unit and take a unit that's really only good at bouncing off onto an objective and then dying on the objective. Or you can take a unit that's really good at running into your opponent and killing them and bouncing off into an objective and taking the objective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, so a good example, I'm playing Legion of Grief at the moment that lets me, like, toss together Night Haunt and some other undead stuff. So I could, if I wanted to, have access to Grave Guard. Grave Guard are kind of slow. They're pretty killy, reasonably defensive, but why do I want something
They're just
that
not good enough at
slowly
any of
walks up
those,
the
yeah.
table, maybe hitting something kind of hard and maybe being reasonably
I
defensive?
mean, for Daughters of Cain, you have the Sisters of Slaughter,
Yeah. Well,
which are
I
kind of
actually
poor
like them
witch
very much.
elves.
Except they've got the sweet 6-inch shenanigan, which I think is becoming more and more important.
And they
in the
have
game.
better range overall.
Yeah.
So they pop up from time to time, but I don't think they're a replacement for the
For the sheer
Witch elf
murdering power of the witch
murder
elves.
ball, yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's probably a third of all units just kind of fit into this weird, don't really have a good role.
And if that's one of the units where you just love the model, then like
Take
we were
it.
saying before,
That's your
take
throwaway points.
That's your throwaway
take your
points.
one unit of them, and
Yep.
it's going to be fine. But
So going to specialized units, we have shooting units, and I would consider a powerful mage in the shooting unit kind of category. You're taking a mage with a really strong I'm going to kill you spell
mhm,
as a shooting unit.
right, threat projection.
Yeah. So the goal of this is to not necessarily, well, you have multiple goals, which kind of falls into your target priority. You can
Mhm.
remove, something nasty or attempt to. You can lessen a large hammer or anvil unit.
Right. I mean, you can build a shooty army where your entire strategy becomes shoot everything.
Yeah.
Or
absolutely.
you can like just incorporate one or two ranged units that you're going to use as that scalpel to say like that character has to die.
One thing that I would say to new players is you do not need shooting in your list.
You do not need shooting on your list, but some can come in very handy.
It
because-
can.
Yeah, because shooting comes, like having both magic, offensive magic and shooting is great because think of the order in which these all occur. Magic
Mhm.
happens before anything moves. So if you can kill something with magic, then that frees up lanes to move through maybe.
Yep.
Shooting happens before charging, so if you can kill something with shooting, then it frees up models or lanes for charging. So like being able to do damage in all of those different phases is really helpful.
It is.
Because it frees up options.
But I don't think you have
No,
to
you
have
don't
shooting
have
in
to.
your army. And I see a lot of posts of people saying, well, I wish I could have put some shooting in this. But
Yeah.
I mean,
And a lot of the time it just unfocuses your army. Like
It does.
You end up with I've got a bit of everything again.
yeah, you turn your entire army into one of those units that's only average at doing stuff
Right.
instead of really good at doing one thing. And I'll see lists where people will put it, they'll do a list critique online and they'll put in, 300 points of shooting units. And it's like, dude, that's 300 points. You could have doubled down on putting in another big hammer or something.
Right.
Um,
So yeah, it has to have a point.
It needs a point. And even if it's a small point sink,
Mm-hmm.
it can be good, but you need to, think about how many points you spent on it and how many points you expect to remove with it.
Yeah, and think what other roles you can combine it with. Like,
Yeah.
I need something that's going to sit on this objective. It would also be nice if it shoots and has an effect on the
Right.
game, even though it's...
Yeah, if you're
So,
holding
yeah.
backfield objectives and you have like a small unit of shooting, that's perfect because
Yeah.
really what it's doing is sitting on the objective.
Right.
Shooting is its bonus. But then there's models like the Weird Knob Shaman that can just blow up with the Foot of Gork
Mm-hmm.
an entire unit.
Yeah.
And, you know, he costs you, what, like 120 or 140 points or something? Or the Medusa for Daughters.
Right.
You know, she's technically a mage, but she has a great shooting attack that's short range. And reasonable in combat.
And with target priority, I'd say the main mistake you see from new players is like, okay, I've got my one shooting unit. That's the scariest looking thing on the table, so I'd better shoot at that. Don't shoot at that. It's probably going to be the most survivable thing as well. Like,
Yeah.
think about something that's going to maybe waste your time later in the game, something that's just going to be annoying. Like, is it useful to pick off a couple models from that really scary unit, or to wipe out those 5 wolves who could waste an entire turn for one of my units?
It's always
right?
more
Look
important
for-
to remove something small.
Yeah.
Or if you get real lucky, you can remove a buffing hero.
Yeah.
So, what is a buffing hero? So, this is not just heroes that buff. There are a few units that supply buffs. Oddly, Gloomspite have sneaky snufflers.
And some of the fanatics do the same thing as well, right?
I
Give an
believe
extra
so.
attack,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, you do
yeah.
get units that buff, but more commonly it's a hero. If you can snipe one of those, you reduce the potency of, 30 models
Yeah.
pretty quickly.
Yeah, this is a hero who, in their own right, is nothing, but sat next to a unit is providing them with a bonus that makes their points worthwhile.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can take Khorne have the bomb lists of the massive amounts of the what's their basic infantry called? Not bloodletters, but the mortals.
Reavers?
Yeah.
Blood Reavers?
The blood reavers, which are pretty mediocre.
At
But
best.
you pump them up with 3 or 4 buffs and they get absurd. So, keep that in mind. If you can pop one of those buffs off by killing that hero, you gain a lot of traction. I prefer magic for it because you don't have to deal with the
lookouts.
lookout sir.
Yeah.
So if you're shooting at it, you have to subtract 1 from your to hit if they're next to a unit. But if you're using magic, which is generally a shorter range and can be countered, you just can blow stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a reason to take multiple mages because sometimes you just need that extra arcane bolt to
just the last mortal wound. on
just that
someone.
last mortal wound to knock a guy completely out. But I think that covers pretty much all of the, what I would consider the major unit types of Age of Sigmar.
Wow, there we go.
Yeah.
So, like, what, maybe general question, but like question to Sophie as well, like, how do you go about starting your list? I'm assuming you kind of think, like, I want to cut, what 2 giant hammers am I going to have in there, and then what do I need to make them kill all the things?
Okay, I usually start with, 4 hammers can I have?
4 hammers.
And then I go, okay, that's not possible. What 3 hammers can I have?
Right.
And then usually I try to settle on 2 to 3 hammers.
Mm-hmm.
3 makes me smile. 2 is like, man, I don't know if this is going to be any good.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely prioritize my hammers first.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the synergy game of AOS where you're just stacking so much together to take one unit that seems unimpressive originally and give it so much potency by the time you're done buffing it.
So what about in the Gits? What do you like the idea of building a list around? Or
I definitely like the larger squigs. So a couple manglers and a colossal are a
I don't really
must.
know. What does the Colossal do?
Oh, the colossal's just
A beast?
wonderful. Yeah, he's fantastic. Does mortal wounds on a charge. My favorite thing is upon death, he can bring spores out, and you can put a squig hopper, or not squig hopper, just a regular squig herd on the table.
Right.
But he hits hard,
Right.
like really hard. We were looking at it the other night.
Yeah, I'm actually bringing up the rules right now.
Okay, cool.
So like a good way to think is, so if you're going to build your armies around some of these units that do better on the charge, like Boingrots and then the Colossal Squig and other squigs, then this thing to start thinking about is what do I need to put in that's going to give me control over who charges who,
and
right?
For
Because
me,
that's going to be the key thing.
I think that's going to be the chaff, as you guys have been putting it. I think is going to be the shooters that I can kind of string in the front, like and just have them shooting, but also just kind of
buffering
taking that charge if someone tries to come at them, and then countering it with the.
Which you can do because everything flies.
Yeah.
Does the Colossal fly as well?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Maybe I'm not familiar enough.
Because often, one of the things I really like to build in an army is lots of chaff, but then my hammers, I always want to be flying hammers.
Yeah.
Which is a fun visual.
What's that?
Flying hammers.
So I've got the Colossal Squig here, and it basically hits like a truck being pushed by a train.
Oh, okay.
So it's got a very poor ranged attack at 8 inches.
Okay.
That's not what we're talking about. Its enormous jaws swing at 8 attacks on that don't go down, hitting on 2s, which does go down, wounding on 3s with Ren 2 and D3 damage.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Mostly that hit on 2s is just nutso, and Ren 2 is great.
Mm-hmm.
And then it has a trampling feet attack, which is 10 attacks base, which degrades. 5 to hit, 3 to wound, -1 Ren and 1 damage. So it'll cause lots of pain to your opponents, especially on the solid D3 roll.
Yeah, so I like this idea of building a list around, having the chaff walls of goblins with bows so they can still do something when they're not in the fray, and then having a whole toolbox of hammers, if you will.
Yeah,
Big
nice little bunch
away.
of hammers to go bash into things.
And are you tempted to put the king in the list or whatever he's called?
No, actually, I think. I've got a loon boss and on a main class.
And Skagrot, the loon king.
Yeah, no, I don't have any plans with him.
He's the only guy who can give you a little more control over your allegiance ability in the.
I think it's worth it.
Right?
Do you think so?
He's worth looking at. He doesn't necessarily need to be in there. Worth looking at.
So
the
next thing I would consider is what do I want to run as my hammers? Is how do I want to buff my hammers?
You're a hammer-centric guy.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. It's how I like to play. I like to hit things.
Okay.
I don't actually care about whether I win or lose. I just want to see all the models die. Simple man.
I prefer entirely the opposite. If I can win the game and nobody has to lose any models at all, because then you don't have to worry about putting them all back on the trays afterwards or whatever it is.
Communist.
If we can all get along, but I still win, then that's
yeah. So you're that kid who'd organize other kids to build the block for it. I was that kid who ran through it.
Yeah, just wanted to smash it up.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the buff game is very important, and I think you have some interesting buff options, especially your army option of if you have control over the moon. It's worth looking to see if you can leave points for him in there to move your moon around and buff your guys up.
He also has a nice little shooting attack. That's one of those shooting attacks kind of that we're talking about. It's not a huge investment, but it's enough to maybe ping a character every now and again.
I read on Reddit, actually, there was somebody was talking about building a list of the sniper hero for Stormcast and maxing out their hero slots, all 6 with just that guy.
Huh. Okay.
So all you do is snipe off all of their heroes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's terrifyingly... if somebody put that down across from me, I'd be like, I don't really know how to approach this because I know what you're gonna do, and I have no way to really stop you other than hope you roll poorly.
Well, here's the thing with an army like that. If they achieve killing all of your buff characters, the witch elves on their own are going to be enough to just wipe all of that off the table, even with no buffs.
Not really.
If your opponent has invested that much in kind of snipey stuff,
they're only investing like 800 points into that.
Half of your army.
Yes.
Well, I like the sentiment. I like that Stormcast players are having to think so far out the box because their armies are garbage now.
They're not
after
garbage.
The GHB.
They're average.
Well, they'll get a new battle tome soon.
Yeah. They get a battle tome every
Twice
other
per
month.
year.
Yeah. GW's just sitting around and like, hey, let's reprint another Stormcast battle tome.
Yeah.
It's just printing money, man.
I know.
Turn on the money machine.
That's why you got to play those armies that nobody wants to play. Like,
Right.
you know. So, how does this all apply? And I think what we can cover now is some of the various scenarios that have exist in the General's Handbook 2019 and may have changed since before. So, first the dogs were fighting, now they're laying next to each other holding paws.
That's adorable.
I know. Guess I got all the fight out. Okay, so we are starting on page 59.
So we'll just take a brief walk through these, right? Just high level. How do we win these scenarios?
Right. You know, how do you play them? How do you set up? What's the general objective that you're going for? Knife to the heart. Boy, that's a favorite of both of ours.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't like it?
No, I don't like knife to the heart. You don't like knife to the heart.
I actually kind of like it. I don't like the new deployment on it, but I like the scenarios.
So
As a
knife to the
whole.
heart, you have two objectives that are organized in corners, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Now they've kind of offset them from before, where they used to be exactly in a corner. Now they're
It's kind of marginal.
kind of pushed closer together. Your deployment used to be a line across the center diagonally. Now they've broken it up into Tetris
Oh.
pieces.
Yeah. Thanks, GW.
And the way you
That'll
win
be
this one
fun to measure out.
is you don't hold the objectives for turns of game points. You hold both objectives, you instantly win.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise,
From turn 3 on, right?
right.
Yeah.
What I don't like about it is it's about as much of let's just fight in the middle of the board as you can get.
It is. It's also, I mean, this is one that generally goes to a minor victory.
Right.
That comes down to kill points. So in general, I don't like that, but I do like it for if you're going to have an event where you're going to have like too many players to really decide a winner with the number of games you have, like you're going to end up with 4 people who have 5 wins at the end.
Right.
This is a nice way to because a lot of those are going to have one minor win in this game. Somebody may have pulled out the major win.
Yeah.
Which you generally have to do something kind of sneaky for, or just completely wipe your opponent off the table.
Right.
But generally you have to do something kind of sneaky, so I like having it in there just for that.
So this is one where I have used Canary Heart Renders hilariously to win.
Yes.
Because what I've done before is I have pushed my opponent with my entire army off of their objective, to which they started running towards mine, and then I dropped the Canary Heart Renders down on my own objective.
So you
You're just
always have
like-
to be aware of things like that. And a lot of people get kind of gotcha'd on this because they don't remember that, say it's battle round 3, and you're going second. A lot of people forget that they are not going to get the chance to have their 3rd turn and correct whatever mistake they've made.
Right.
If their opponent snatches it off them at the top of turn 3, then the game would just end. You don't get your
Yep.
turn 3. No, do not pass
So that is
go.
something to keep in mind with this one. I do see this frequently in events that we've gone to.
Unforgiven. Yeah, and I think it's a lot because people want to do that minor win versus major win thing.
I just don't like the idea of
that.
minor
Often it
wins.
just comes down to who killed more.
Yeah.
I like that when I'm playing Zeech because I can just hide at the back, shoot one thing, and then say, "All right, now you got to come to me." Classic Tom strategy.
So the next one is Total Conquest, which is a fairly straightforward objective cap mission. It looks like zebra stripe gum for deployment. And by that I mean you have these triangles cut out, and then there's a strip down the center of no man's land. There's 4 objectives, 2 in the no man's land, 1 in each territory. And you gain 1 point per turn that you hold it, and you get a bonus point when you knock somebody off of it. So, I mean, the best way to score more points on this from the paper general strategy is to knock your opponent off of theirs, but still hold on to yours.
So a mistake people will often make on this is, you know, if they get first turn, they think, I'm going to run a unit across really fast and just take this objective, boom, score a point. Then you've just opened the door to your opponent getting twice as many points as you by then knocking off that small unit.
Exactly.
So think about, you know...
Don't run forward on this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or do run forward if I'm playing you. That's what I want to see. Because I want to... Because they're all equal.
Right.
There's no bonus to having the one in your territory
no,
versus
only
having
a
one in your
bonus for
opponent's
taking it off
territory.
your opponent. So if you're going to run forward and take it, make sure it's something that's going to last out a turn or two. That's not just going to get knocked off and give up more points.
But other than that, I think it's fairly straightforward.
Straightforward and good.
And good.
Fun game.
Yeah. Duality of Death. So this is one that I like having Marathi for and don't like if I don't have Marathi. And this is actually a very tricky one, especially with the change to it. So the change to it is... So there's 2... Well, let's cover how you play it, then we'll cover how it changed. So there's 2 objectives, both on the center of the board. You're playing on the 6-foot sides. So the center is along the 6-foot center divider line, or we'll call it hamburger.
Sure.
Right? 2 objectives, evenly spaced, kind of in 18 inches from either side. And when you cap the objective, you can cap it with battle line or hero. You need to stay within 3 inches of it to maintain it. And the longer you maintain it, the more points you get. So on turn 1, it's worth 1 point. Turn 2, it's worth 2 points. Turn 3, it's worth 3 points. And it just keeps going. So classically, what will happen with this is each army will scramble for one of the objectives, and you'll almost have a draw. Because people will just hold on to theirs with everything they've got. Yeah. It's not worth losing yours for a turn, because then you lose.
But that often comes down to how the deployment has gone. It could be both players have kind of deployed hard on one side of the table, and then it's just going to be a scrum for that one.
Right. So, I mean, I think the ideal objective for non-cheese armies for this is to...
What is a non-cheese army?
Not Marathi.
Got it.
Not something your opponent can't kill for 3 turns that can get to the objective on turn 1. So we'll cover that in a minute. So I guess the change to this is your deployment zone used to stretch across the entire center. Now you're in the corners. So you get both corners on your side, which really changes it up. Because you can't really switch how your deployment's going to act after you've deployed it. So deploying stuff on this is extremely serious.
This is one of the only ones where I think, you know, that choice of turn is really critical.
Absolutely.
Like, if you can go first and you know you have the tools to, like we were saying before, score one of the objectives with the intention of getting knocked off it for the rest of the game, and get enough on the other objective that you can hold it all game. Right. It can almost just be one at that point.
So if you know you're going first, you can almost deploy something really small here on the one that you're not going for, and your entire army on the other one. Because all you have to do is hold it for 1 turn. Because you'll be up 1 point, and you hold the other one for the entire game and just hope you don't get tabled.
Right.
So Marathi brings a very interesting thing into this, that she can actually hold it for 3 turns.
Bare mins.
Yeah, bare minimum 3 turns. So she can basically, it doesn't take more than 3 wounds per turn, has 12 wounds on her. We're assuming she's taking some wounds on the active player's turn, so you don't get 4 turns out of it, you get 3. Park her on one objective and have your entire army fight for the other one.
Right.
And you win. And you win by a lot. You have your opponent concede on turn 3 because he realizes the math just isn't there for him.
Right. It is one of those, if you have the right army list and get the choice of turn, it can almost be like a done deal at that point.
So this is where including a battalion is super useful because it minimizes your drops.
Which means I think it's a dumb scenario.
Right. Because you like to just deploy chaff for days.
Yeah.
So a battalion you can deploy either all at once or in a bulk part of it or individually. But it only counts as necessary. You can have it count as few as one drop or up to the amount of drops that are there. So battalions are good for these. Some of these. Battle for the Pass is the next one. And you basically have 4...
We're fighting lengthway down the table this time.
It wasn't lengthwise before, was it?
It was.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is the one that's always been lengthwise because it's for the pass, right? So this is supposed to be
right.
mountain pass or whatever you want to think of it.
So you have a triangle of deployment, 2 feet in from the 4-foot sides.
Is it a right angle triangle? It's some kind of triangle.
Yeah, it's a right angle triangle.
Yeah. Isosceles triangle?
It is an isosceles triangle.
It's
both.
It's both. Wow.
Man, biologists and their knowledge of geometry is stunning.
Mm-hmm. And we know that the hypotenuse is 48 inches long. So what does that mean each other side is?
You need to take the sign of that. Okay. I hate you, Tom.
All right, there we go. So you got triangles to deploy.
Yeah. We can just be all like, simple about this, and there's triangles. Don't make me over-engineer the triangles.
Just lay out some dice.
Yeah.
Measure it out.
Yep, exactly. What's cool about this is the one in your territory, you get 1.4. The ones in the middle, you get 2 points for, and the one in your opponent's territory is worth 4 points. So I've seen this go lots of ways playing this one. You can go for taking the ones on the neutral ground and almost try to grab one quick, grab 2 points off of it, and then hold those other 2 objectives that you have. So you go for 3 right away, and then you realize you're not going to keep it, so you just stick with 2.
Right.
My preferred way to win this is just bulldoze through the middle of it and take the one that's worth 4 and hold on to yours at the same time and not worry about the 2 on the sides.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the best way to play it.
It's one of those ones where you can easily think of ways that you're just going to, get 1 point over your opponent and kind of keep going like that all game.
I think the way to win this one is to get 1 point over your opponent.
Yeah, probably.
That's it. But there's a lot of ways to accomplish that.
Yeah.
So much talk. All right. That's all going to get cut. So we're going to...
Yeah.
So the next battle plan is Star Strike, which I don't think either of us really dig too much.
I used to love it. And I still actually kind of like it. I'm maybe a little salty about it.
You're always salty.
I just don't like change, which is strange for us each player, right?
Right.
But when something's, I'm all for them like fixing scenarios that had a problem with them, but when there's one that works quite well and they just change it for what seems like no reason, why?
So Star Strike starts with no objectives.
Right. Which is kind of interesting actually, given there's now all of these rules for how far away from objectives, like your faction terrain and stuff has to be. This one you have free reign in the table, put it down anywhere.
So
no objectives.
And then you have objectives appear on the board.
Strike down.
From the stars.
Indeed.
And you roll 2d6 to determine kind of what lane across the 48-inch they'll be.
Mm-hmm. So 1 comes down at the end of the first turn that's going to land on the center line at a, let's call it, at a longitude determined by a 2d6 roll. And then at the end of the second turn, 2 are going to come down within the player's territories. Again, longitude is determined by the 2d6 roll.
Or you use hamburger.
Hamburger?
Yeah. This is cut that way. It looks like hamburger.
Well, I'm saying the longitude as in like where along this axis.
Oh yeah, so that's the hot dog cut.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Fine.
So your deployment's hamburger, which is cutting it across the long section of it.
Well, but I'm talking about the specific distance along this axis.
Yeah.
We're talking about X and Y axes here.
Yes.
I like his terms better. I'm like, Amber, what
Wait,
the
this
hell
is
are you talking
the
about?
latitude and the
I guess that's
longitude,
just how they
right?
taught school in the Great White North.
Right.
We broke everything down to a
Hamburger,
simpletons.
either a hamburger
Yeah.
or
Yeah, so I mean, you can say that they come down on the x-axis and you're divided along the y-axis.
right.
For those who want to get super into it. But anyway, what they changed about this is that before it was just roll a d3 and it came down in the center of 1, 2, or 3
1, 2,
essentially.
3. So there was equal probability of it being on left, right, or center portions of the table.
Right.
Now, as we know from our 2d6 roll, there's a bell curve.
Yep.
That means it's going to be highest probability they all come down in the central zone. Which is, I don't know, I guess that's what I'm salty about, although it could be fine. I haven't really played it enough to know.
I don't like the idea of taking an objective game and making it instantly into a scrum.
Right. You've
know?
made it people can now kind of anticipate more that it's going to be somewhere there in the center, and they can deploy heavy in the middle and just kind of bulldoze.
Even though that benefits my general strategy of find your opponent and rip them apart as fast as you can.
While they try and hide in a corner.
Yeah, the way to take objectives here is much easier for an army that's designed to just rip apart your opponent's army, because you just rip apart your opponent's army and whatever you have kicking around behind your main force is taking the objectives, which are all clustered neatly together. So it's not my favorite of the changes for sure. I think if they changed the ordering and subdivided out that bell curve, that'd be cool. So I like the idea of them possibly dropping next to each other, but not more frequently dropping next to each other. So, Scorched Earth. We actually just played before this.
It's sweet.
Sure.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's the best scenario.
I actually like the changes to Scorched Earth a lot. They added a objective and changed it from a y-axis deployment to an x-axis deployment.
Sure.
All right. And super easy to set up. You just put down your 4 objectives. Now, the thing about Scorched Earth is that every objective is worth 1 point, but if you get to your opponent's objective on the start of turn 2 or 3.
Anytime after the start of round 2.
So, turn 2 and on, if you get to your opponent's objective and you gain control of it, you can burn it down. And then you gain D3 victory points, and your opponent doesn't get to get it back.
Yes.
So, can be
pretty sweet.
Really good.
Yeah. You can, if you can defend all of yours and sneak something in to burn one of your opponents at some
Especially
point,
if you get a double turn on turn 2.
Yeah.
Or turn 1 double turn, so you get to the thing and then burn it down, and yeah, you're just happy.
Burn it.
I like it a lot more than before.
Why didn't you like it before?
I don't know. I think I didn't like it before because of the way the map was divided. I felt like the deployment was so restricted to being around your back line and hanging out with your objectives.
Yeah, it definitely made you string out all the way along the table to
Which
stop people getting in and burning. Now that we're on kind of short edge x-axis, whatever we're calling it,
yeah,
you're a lot more kind of funneled into the objectives. There's not so much stringing out to protect them.
Which I like. I think if you took it and you changed the deployments to be along the y-axis, it wouldn't be as much fun as I had playing it on the x-axis.
I just like that there's 8 objectives. That's pretty sweet.
8 objectives is crazy.
A lot of places.
I have to put together a couple more objective markers now. All right, total commitment. This is another one where you score more points in your opponent's territory than in your territory. Honestly, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference.
Well, that's because you play Daughters of Cain.
I was going to say...
For some armies, there's a huge difference in this one, which is that you're not allowed
Then battle for the pass?
Yeah.
Oh, right. You're allowed no reserves. Yeah.
So for some armies, it's completely neuters a core concept of your army. Let's say Stormcast.
Yeah, but they can't kill anything if they're up in Spaceland.
What?
They don't kill anything unless they're on the table. Why would you want them up in reserve?
Because it gives you so many deployment options.
But
because it makes the other people deploy in awkward ways to zone you out the back table.
But you're not killing anything.
Oh my God. You're being silly.
Yes.
So Stormcast, one of the main strengths is that kind of flexible deployment by being in the stars, in the ether sea, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. The Forbidden Realm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just like everybody being in the ether sea together, swimming with the eels.
It's so Beatles of you.
Right. So yeah, I think it kind of screws a couple armies.
Yeah, it does squeeze a couple of armies then. It's a diagonal deployment. Yeah, and I don't know. I don't think there's a whole lot else to talk about.
No.
It's the same strategy of you're trying to knock your opponents down for one turn and hold on to yours. Focal points is a ton of fun, which is the next one.
Super fun.
This is getting up there for my
This is one of
favorite.
the best because there's a lot of thinking that goes on here.
Yeah, all right. So it's in a relatively standard deployment. You're playing along the y-axis division, and there is a center objective, and then arranged in an X, there's 4 more objectives, and they're all 18 inches from the center objective. So what makes this really cool is that if you control the center objective, it is worth 2 points. If you control the objectives that are across from each other, or across the center objective, you get 3 points, and every other objective you control is worth a point. And I think that makes it a ton of fun.
It makes it a ton of fun because there's a lot of you can be down on points and you're trying to math out. So if I can get these 2 opposite ones from each other, it's like way more useful to me than just holding my 2.
Right.
So I got to push on this side, hold this side. Makes it, a lot of fun.
The better part of Valor is I haven't played this one yet, so
not the updated version. I played the old one plenty. The old one was one that caused a lot of nerd rage because you could easily just win at top of turn 1. Like the way it was previously, you could, if you had a fast army, you could run across the table and burn all the objectives turn 1.
Oh, okay.
And your opponent couldn't really do anything about it. Now I think they've changed it to you can only burn them starting at the end of the second battle round. So that gives more counterplay. Previously you could just run across, burn every objective on the table, and the game was just over immediately.
Wow.
If you gain control of an objective in the first battle round and have not lost it by the end of the 5th battle round, you score 8 additional victory points.
Right.
Which is pretty good.
But you do that. You score those points always by removing the objective, by burning it. So you kind of have these. There's a few strategies, right? You can just try and take all the objectives off the table as soon as possible, and then nobody's going to get a chance to score the big points later in the game.
Yeah. Or you try to castle up and hold yours.
Or more often, you kind of say, this one I'm going to try and keep for the full 5 turns. This one maybe just a couple turns.
So when we start, throwing you into some trial games and stuff with your list,
right?
We'll give you a brief tutorial of how to play each of these. Some of them end up being, I think, a little bit more fun than others.
Mm-hmm.
But I think all of them are more fun than a classic, just we're going to fight, or the standard.
Way more fun than that, for sure.
When 8th edition 40K came out, everybody immediately glommed onto we're going to do the objective style play. And I like it, but what I didn't like is it's kind of like you're still playing the same game every time. You're drawing random objectives, trying to complete them. And I think that's good. But I really like the fact that each one of these maps, and GW has done a bang-up job of supplying us with really interesting scenarios.
I think so.
And I think in General's Handbook 1, it was okay.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, hey, look, what if we added objectives to this game?
Right.
General's Handbook 2, man, we played through all of those several times.
So many times.
They were great. And now that we're into the 3rd General's Handbook, I think they've really started to lock down what makes them fun. The next one is shifting objectives.
Well, the nice thing for you is that when you have that hand of Gork in your pocket, you've got a way to score any objective at any time if your opponent's foolish enough to leave any of them.
Right.
So you put your opponent in a really... And that's the same for any army that has a teleport, right? Your opponent just constantly
By
has to
just
worry
having
about
it, you're
any-
forcing your opponent to take care of it.
Yeah.
You know, you can't grab an objective and move off of it and keep control of it and move away because you'll just hand work something there.
Right.
Shifting objectives is actually pretty straightforward. I don't think this one changed at all, did it?
It used to be X-axis.
No, now it's Y-axis.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. I don't really think it changes how it plays other than you start a little bit closer to each other.
Deployment is classic. Netherlands flag.
Yeah. Sure, or Italian flag.
No, it's not the Italian flag. Italian flag is
Yeah.
the other way,
It's more French, isn't it?
with green and red in it too.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
he can't
like
really see.
Oh, yeah, these
It's
are
brown,
colors.
white, and brown.
Netherlands is the stacked stripes.
Yeah, okay, I
Red,
got you.
white,
I
and
see where
blue.
you're going with that.
There we go.
Yeah, okay. It's the colors thing that threw me.
Colors?
Yeah, you know, I don't see colors good.
You don't?
No,
How do you paint models?
they put labels on the paints.
What? How do you know what the colors look like?
I don't.
Okay. Well, turns out, all right. Okay, anyway, yeah, that's
Yeah.
little color.
So essentially,
issues?
on each of these, you have 3 objectives all in the center line, and you roll a D3, and the one that matches the D3 becomes the primary objective, and it's worth 3 points, and the other ones are worth 1 point.
And then that shifts every turn.
Right.
Hence the name, shifting objectives.
Oh man, they thought that
You
out.
got it? Did he get
Strategy for this: hold 2 objectives.
it? That's deep. Sometimes, yeah, one's just going to turn into the primary objective that's really bad for you, and in that case, I'll often be like, all right, I'll wait for it to be one that's better for me.
So the next one we're going to cover is places of arcane power. So what do they mean by arcane power, Tom?
They mean that it's dumb, because it used to actually be arcane power. What do I mean by this? I'll unpack that a little bit. So in this scenario, you've got 3 objectives, and a hero has to be the one to hold them, right? So it's standard. Whoever arrives first rules, controls it. You move a hero up to it, you control it until your enemy kills that hero, and then they can control it with a hero. Why did I say it's dumb initially? Well, in the old GHB, the scenario was actually places of arcane power, because only heroes with magical artifacts or wizards could hold those objectives now. So now they've kind of made it, I was going to say generified, is that a word? Made it more generic.
It can be a word if
To
you
all
want.
heroes. They've generified it so all heroes can hold it. And now I don't know why it's called arcane power anymore.
Yeah, they could just call it places of power.
Places of power.
Yeah.
I don't think either of us are too thrilled on this one.
Ah.
It's your classic split down the diagonal. Objectives are on that diagonal line.
See, I liked it when it was like wizards can hold it, because I plays each and everything with a wizard.
And everybody should take a wizard.
Everyone should have a wizard.
It's because the corn players
hero
felt
with an
left
artifact,
out.
I guess, but you can still have a hero with an artifact.
Yeah.
Although that means often you only have one model and your whole army can do it.
So an interesting side rule on this is you can immediately take it by having a hero kill the other hero
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
within 3 inches of it. Then yeah, it's nothing super fantastic about this one that really strikes me as being the most fun to play. I hope any tournament organizers kind of leave this one on the sideline. It's not.
2 out of 5 would not recommend.
I mean, with a bowl of rice, maybe it hits 2.5 out of 5.
Maybe.
Yeah. So tournament organizers, if you want to supply me with some rice, I'll play it. Otherwise,
It's fine.
yeah, sure. It seems really kind of basic, unlike the other ones, which have some kind of fun to it.
It's not getting me excited like the last one we have here.
Yeah. The way to win this one is to hold 2 objectives.
I'll kill your opponent.
Or kill your opponent, yeah. Then hold all the objectives afterward.
Yeah.
Honestly, this one, a good strategy is to just kill your opponent. Just kill him. Kill him by turn 3 and then take all 3 objectives for the remaining 2 turns.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, All right, so what I think is the absolute gem of this, and I thought it was in General's Handbook too as well, is relocation
But
orb.
now simplified a little, so even better.
Yeah, it doesn't have that crazy diagram where stuff
The
just went.
horrendogram.
Yeah,
That
so
looks pretty crazy
No,
to me
the old
comparatively.
the old one had like lines everywhere.
Oh,
It was like
wow.
and you could
consultant.
double move it if you rolled right.
Yeah, you could like roll a 6 and then it would move twice, and you're following this like arcane diagram.
So the way this works is you only have one objective to control, and you count the most models near it. But wizards count as 20 models.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you get a wizard near it, you can pretty much instantly win it.
Or hero with artifacted power.
Or a hero with artifact. Okay.
A unit of 10 pink horrors counts as 200 models. It doesn't really.
No.
Pretty sure only 20 still, but that would be cool.
And every turn it will move.
Doesn't
which is
move. It relocates.
Okay.
It's in the name.
It will relocate.
It relocates.
Which can make it really funny because sometimes it'll bounce to the same 2 spots the entire time.
Right.
And it'll force you guys to just try to kill each other over this orb.
Right.
And sometimes it will really move around the battlefield. And, the game becomes both armies chasing the stupid orb around, looking for points because the points get so close in this.
Exactly.
And then, nobody's fighting each other. You're staying 4 inches away and both charging after this orb to try to get more guys on it.
The other interesting thing here is there's some asymmetry in how many points it's worth to you depending on who took first turn that round.
Right.
So if you took the first turn in that battle round, it's only worth 1 point to you to score it. But if you went second, 3 points. So there's some incentive there to not pick first turn.
Right.
Nice.
So I've had people lose on this because they chose the first turn.
Correct, because they get all bloodthirsty and
Yep.
want to just get in there and kill.
So this is one where I'm literally poking myself in the leg underneath the table, don't be bloodthirsty.
Think about points.
Think about what you're doing. You want to try to win, which is really how I play AOS. Half of me wants, all of me wants to crush my opponent, but maybe half of me wants to actually play the game. So that half has to yell at all of me.
Well, a lot of the time the two are aligned, but then sometimes they step out of line.
Right. And then they have an internal battle. Yeah, I would play a tournament that was 5 relocation orbs.
It would be
Easily.
fun. I could do a themed tournament.
It would be great. And man, the other fun thing is what you choose to use is the relocation orb.
Yes.
And we've put down mangler squigs. We've put down different
I think
spells.
that was a bar of soap that's
Just moving on its own.
It's like one of those Benny Hill movies, and everyone's just in a chain running after it.
This one you can actually go after your opponent because they will put themselves in bad positions to go for the orb. However, it's so much fun to go for the orb. I've never actually focused on that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So this you just gotta play this one, and then you can focus on objectives.
Also, I love having Marathi on board because she's a wizard. And you can move her around quickly and take that second turn, knock stuff off of it, get those 3 points. And she's so much fun on this. Yeah.
The interesting thing is
this is a 7 out of 5.
Highly recommend.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing, the orb itself follows kind of standard objective rules, so most models within 6. But those heroes and wizards, in order to count as the 20, have to be within 3. So they're gonna get even closer than most things.
I mean, I could see a strategy where you just kind of chaff wall around the orb path. Could be hilarious too.
Yeah.
Where your goal is to prevent your opponent from being
Well, that's often what
maneuverable.
I'll do if I get the first turn. I'm throwing walls up that's going to kind of cross, because then at the end of the first turn, there's kind of, there's only 2 options where it's going to move. So I try and get something covering those 2 options.
Right.
Kind of zone the opponent out of there.
If I get the second turn, I try to kill what my opponent put on those 2 options.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just what you're going for.
So there we go. That was all of them.
That's all
the
of them.
GHB scenarios.
I think overall,
a rich and varied game.
yeah, I think
think we
overall a strong update in the new General's Handbook.
Yeah, right. So now we went through all the points last time, all the scenarios now, so that's a complete GHB review.
Yeah.
Solid work.
So I think
GW.
in a couple weeks after Gen Con, we'll probably sit down and do a Battle Tome review with, I think Sophie can be our first for
Okay.
Glimpse by Glitz.
Glitz.
I mean, depends how you paint them, man.
Yeah. Glitzy.
I mean, that's tempting.
The glue spike glitz.
Yeah.
I like it.
Get some glitter paint.
Yeah, we can do a deep dive on them gets.
Yeah. I have the book and you have the
Yep,
book.
I've got the book.
I have the book too.
And by then, I think I'll have a better.
What?
I'm not surprised.
I
It's
buy
a cool
all the
army.
books. I love the books.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm a collector of the books.
Oh, okay.
Of the literature.
Ah,
That's what we'll call it.
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're one of them reading types.
Actually, yeah. I do like reading them. Every now and again, there's just like a protest tome that I don't buy out. Protest not liking that army. Like
Stormcast,
Fire
episode
Slayers.
47.
No, Fire Slayers I think are just dumb
You have all the
as a concept,
Stormcast books?
So, Stormcast I actually only have the ebook.
Ah, okay.
But no, I'm not a Stormcast fan, so I wouldn't buy a hard copy of that book.
I do like reading some of the lore on them. I wish I cared. I care about the lore, but I only care about the lore for the armies that I like.
Right.
Which is why I find Daughters of Cain an interesting choice for me, because I cared more about the lore before I really got into it. And once I started to learn about the lore, I was like, oh man, I gotta play these.
And then you're like, oh, bonus is broken as fuck.
Yeah, these are obscene. Yeah,
Sweet.
exactly.
I like the lore, and I like a little opera research as well.
I like how they're getting into the lore a bit more.
Mhm.
I do like that the lore feels, and the grognards are going to scream at me for this, but I feel like the lore in AOS is a lot more open than it was in fantasy.
Yeah.
And I think where they're going now is actually a better place than just everybody hates everybody.
There
Right.
goes the down. The down votes are coming.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I still don't
Good thing
really...
it's how long into it?
Too far.
That's why I put it at the end.
They're gonna have to listen to the whole.
Oh yeah,
thing.
they'll have to listen to the whole thing before they can hear me
Yeah.
critique it. But I mean, seriously, like, come on. I mean, how many universes does GW have to invent where everybody has a reason to fight themselves?
Yeah.
Like,
I feel like they invented this whole world so that there was more reason for all of the armies to be fighting each other.
I don't know.
Like the trouble with the old world was that everyone was like camped up in different parts of the world. So it's like why would the lizard men be like scooting off to the middle of, the desert?
Obviously, lizard
two
magic.
Exactly, but then like now we have all these like interconnected planescapes, just like they came to a realm gate.
Yeah, but I mean, like an order versus order battle. I always picture it as like a friendly skirmish as opposed to the death.
Yeah.
I don't see like Stormcast going up against Sylvaneth ever as like they're actually trying to kill each other. They're really on the same side.
They're not really.
I mean, pretty much.
Sylvaneth, what if the Stormcast want to cut down that forest to build some kind of fortress out of?
I think they'd talk about it and have like a nice little sit down.
Well, like Daughters of Cain are order. They just want to murder everyone.
No. Daughters of Cain
everyone.
are protecting everybody in the mortal realms.
No.
Yeah, that's their lore. They all go out and they form their temples in these order cities and they go, help them as much as they can. Yeah, they are. They're being super neighborly and collecting all the blood.
Having a giant orgy and a giant pool of blood, and then some Stormcast show
But
up.
nobody knows about that.
I mean,
See, that's the thing is nobody knows about the blood orgies.
They're not like, oh hey Storm Bros, come join us in the
because
blood jacuzzi.
they're not even invited to the blood
in
jacuzzi.
the blood hot tub.
I think they get an idea when things are going a bit wrong and they start cutting themselves and drinking the blood of their enemies as they're killing them. But they've been your neighbors for so long. So what if they're a little bloodthirsty? It's all right.
Just that crazy neighbor you don't go over there on Saturdays because that's when
Maybe that's why I relate to Daughters of Cain so well. Yeah.
turns into like swinger party on Saturdays.
More like crazy neighbor, but
Right.
And I feel like Chaos is really God aligned in the lore right now. Because you get less of the I'm going to take a mostly Khorne list with a splash of Tzeentch or something that you saw in fantasy.
I still don't super get the whole setting that we have here for a game, but I also don't really care. so that's fine.
I think the setting is massively open, and I appreciate
It is very open.
Yeah. What's your take, Sophie, on the setting for AOS?
I don't know a whole lot about it. I like the openness of the, like you said, why would Lizardman or Seraphim just show up in like
like
this northern territory,
this Germanic village or whatever, full of codpiece worms.
It's a little more realistic, because we strive for realism in our plastic toys. But I think it makes more sense.
It's nice to ground our plastic toy hobby in something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think people get it too little obsessed with the grounding, but then they're taking plastic toys too seriously.
Yes.
Right. I think for me, the old world just had more like interesting, gritty details in it that haven't maybe been filled in these realms. Like here's just like the poxy peasants and the farmers and what they're doing, and then like these chaos people come.
But they also had how many years to do it?
Exactly. So there's a lot. Here I feel like, everyone's just some blood crazed warrior running around chopping people's heads off, and there's not a huge amount of info about the farmers, the peasants. What are they up
Life
to?
sucks for a peasant here, but life sucked for a peasant before.
It did, yeah.
I mean, I think a universal commonality is that life sucks for anything. Is life sucks if you're a peasant.
Common man.
The common man. Right.
So what I find funny about the plastic toys thing is one of my funnier Warhammer moments is back in Fantasy, and I had all my carrying cases, and I used Office Space boxes, the see-through boxes that you see scattered around my house, some with armies in them, full of my painted orc army. And I was walking in a rather rough part of Buffalo to play at a friend's house with these two cases, and of course, they're full of toy orcs that have been painted. And this guy is like, "Hey man, are those full of toys?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "That's awesome." I was like, I'm not going to try to defend it. I'm playing with toys.
What are you going to say? No.
These are army men that I painted.
Exactly.
Yeah. What am I going to tell them? No.
That's just
clearly what it is.
Stuff.
No, it's just like cupcakes. Yeah.
All right.
It's
So
like drugs.
Any armies you're not working on right now? See a lot more paint got on your ghosts.
Is that a joke?
That's a look at death right there.
No, I have actually been working on the ghost, so I'm trying to work out where the
I didn't notice.
Okay.
I've
been doing some highlighting and stuff on my 20 ghosts.
Yeah.
Out of like 100 ghosts.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't care. I've got one painted army. Ghosts are.
I try to get an army done a year.
Side.
I think this year's going to end up being cod pieces.
Cod pieces.
Yeah.
I don't have any such lofty hobby goals as getting an army done a year.
I spent last week assembling 100 free guilds, so.
Oh my god. If I can get 15 minutes a night painting a little ghost every now and again, then I'm happy with my hobby progress.
Fair. Sophie, you're going to start working on Gloomspite once all the Kingdom of Death stuff is over, so that'll be cool.
Yep.
Gloomspite Glitz.
Yep.
Now you have to do like your loon boss is some kind of like 80s rock star.
They're already going to be kind of bright with the purple and white zebra stripes.
You could put like a moon over their eye. Like
like
Gem.
Yeah.
The 80s cartoon. And you
like
call them
Kiss the band.
Yeah.
With like stars on their faces.
I think Gem had a star though, didn't she?
You'd use a moon though, because they're
because
they're Gloomspite gets.
Glitz.
Now I can't say it wrong. All right, I think that concludes this podcast. You want to send us off?
Cheerio, old chaps.
All right, that'll work. All right.